Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the fourth day in our course. Our course of miracles, of course. This course we're on, we're all in it together. Goodness gracious, and we're welcome. I welcome you here today. Hear this today. Lesson 4. These thoughts do not mean anything. Let's let this help you remind yourself. These thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things that are in this tent, in this room, on this street, from this window that I see. All right. So now we're going inside. And by the way, as we start, I'd like to remind us to say that the Course tells us we need not accept this, or we need not believe this, and that actually we're likely to have resistance to it, and that's okay. It says we may even actively resist it, but that if we entertain the ideas, if we just use them, remember them, remind ourselves of them, and do the practices, they will have their effects. So also there is a sequentiality to it. We are on day 4 or lesson 4, and there is a specifically sophisticated sequentiality to it, but also on a deeper level. On a deeper level, there is holographiality to it, meaning in some deeply profound way, you'll see the information's holographic, and so if you pick up one part of it, the idea is that you pick up all of it, or you pick up none of it, basically. So anyways, last few days, we've been looking outside, and we've been saying, nothing I see in this tent, in my room, on this street, means anything. Then we said the next day, everything I see on this street, in my room, in my tent, wherever I happen to be, I've given it all the meaning it has for me. And then we said, I don't understand anything I see. And we made the distinction that in the Course of Miracles, it has us have this this recognition that joy and peace and understanding come together. So if we're not having that, and that's the reason why we're practicing, that's like to get that, then we can say we don't understand anything by the Course's standards. And that's a bit of a step towards pure forgiveness of the projections. The world that we projected out is the idea that this is a mental universe. This is sort of like, it's not, you don't have to believe it's true, just practice it and attempt to take the world off. Okay, so these thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things I see in this room. That's the title for this lesson. Hold on a second. These thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things that are in this room or on the street. That's the title of the lesson. Okay, unlike the preceding lessons, these exercises don't begin with the idea for the day. Unlike the preceding ones, the previous lessons, these exercises, the ones that we're doing today, don't begin with the idea for the day. It's a funny sentence. Remember, these thoughts don't mean anything, okay? You can be absurdistly fun about this, okay? This doesn't mean anything. In these practice periods, begin with noting the thoughts that are crossing your mind for about a minute. In these practice periods, begin with noting the thoughts that are crossing your mind for about a minute. So as we do our practices today, we're going to close our eyes and we're going to note what we ever call thoughts, whatever we call thoughts. We'll do that for about a minute, okay? And then we're going to apply the idea to them. We're going to notice a thought and then we're going to apply the idea to them. The idea is these thoughts don't mean anything. They are like the things that I see in this room or on this street or in my house or whatever, If you are already aware of unhappy thoughts, use them as subjects for the idea. If you are already aware of unhappy thoughts, then use them as the subject for this idea. The idea being, as you close your eyes and you see a thought, you say to that thought, whatever you call a thought, you say to it, these thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things that are in this room. This is a clearing of the mind and a unification as well of appearances of separation. So, okay. Do not, however, select only the thoughts that you think are, quote, bad. So if you have a thought that you think is unhappy, use that thought, but don't try to select only the thoughts that you think are bad. You will find, if you train yourself to look at your thoughts, that they represent such a mixture that, in a sense, none of them can be called good or bad. This is why they don't mean anything. Later you'll see there's a lesson in a few down here that'll happen. It's called "My Meaningless Thoughts Are Showing Me a Meaningless World." It's like meaningless meaning that we really don't like, you know? So, okay, in selecting the subjects for the application of today's idea, the usual specificity is required. Do not be afraid to use good thoughts as well as bad. Don't be afraid when you're using these thoughts. You're looking for a thought, whether it be bad or good, you're going to use it to practice that these thoughts don't mean anything. They are like the things that are in this room, whether they're good or bad, whether they're in the room, whether they're in my mind, they don't mean anything. That's the practice. This is to forgive the world of the meaning you've given it. This is quantum forgiveness. Getting started out strong, y'all. It's day 4. Oh my God, already here. Whew. Okay. So none of either the good or the bad, none of them represent your real thoughts, which are being covered up by them. Neither the good nor the bad represent your real thoughts, which are being covered up by those things. The, quote, good ones are but shadows of what lies beyond. The, quote, good ones are but shadows of what lies beyond, and shadows make sight difficult. The bad ones are blocks to sight and make seeing impossible. You don't want either. So when it comes to these thoughts, that it's saying we're going to look for them in our mind, we're going to close our eyes, we're going to say when we see one, these thoughts don't mean anything. They are like the things that are in this room. Whether those thoughts are good or bad, they don't represent your real thoughts, which are being covered up by them. Actually, your real thoughts are being covered up by the thoughts of the world. The good ones are but shadows of what lies beyond. Actually, it's like the projection on the mirror on the movie screen. It may be a pretty story, but behind it, but all the story is made of shadows. The stories are made of shadows, but behind it, there's a truth of a light in the metaphor of the projector in the movie screen. Okay. Anyways, and the bad ones are blocks to sight and make seeing impossible. So the good ones are shadows and make seeing difficult, and the bad ones make seeing impossible. Okay, so paragraph number 3. This is a major exercise and will be repeated from time to time in somewhat different form. The aim here is to train you in the first steps toward the goal of separating the meaningless from the meaningful. It is a first attempt in the long-range purpose of learning to see the meaningless as outside you and the meaningful within. It is a first attempt in the long-range... Hey, what up, Heather Berger? Hey, good day. It is a first attempt in the long-range purpose of learning to see the meaningless as outside you and the meaningful within. It is also the beginning of training your mind to recognize what is the same and what is different. So separating the meaningless from the meaningful, that's what is one of the aims of this lesson, and to recognize that the meaningless is outside you, or that the absurd is the story of the world that we're sort of hypnotized by. Oh my God. But that we're kind of like, back here kind of, or something, or you could say like, like right there kind of, or so, like right there. You could do that. See, something like that. Okay, anyways, this is the first attempt in a long-range purpose of learning to see the meaningless as outside you and the meaningful within. It is also the beginning of training your mind to recognize what is the same and what is different. In using your thoughts for application of the idea for today, apply each thought by the central figure or event it contains. For example, this thought about blank. So I close my eyes, I see a thought about like apples, juggling apples. This thought about juggling apples does not mean anything. It is like the things that I see in this room, that I see in this tent, that I see on this street. So if I close my eyes and I see a thought about the news being stupid, this thought about the news being stupid does not mean anything. It is like the things that I see in this room, on this street, or wherever I happen to think I am. You can also use the idea for a particular thought that you recognize as harmful. You can also use this idea for a particular thought that you think is harmful, so you can purposely bring to your mind a thought that you think is harmful, and you can say to it, this thought about blank does not mean anything. It is like these things in this room that I see. But the practice is useful, but it is not a substitute for the more random procedures to be followed for the exercise. Do not, however, examine your mind for more than a minute or so. You are too experienced as yet to avoid a tendency to become pointlessly preoccupied. Do not, however, examine your mind for more than a minute or so. So you're too experienced to avoid the tendency to become pointlessly preoccupied, it says. Further, since these exercises are the first of their kind, you may find the suspension of judgment in connection with thoughts particularly difficult. Do not repeat these exercises more than 3 or 4 times during the day. So only do this exercise max 4 times today for 2 minutes. 4 times max throughout the day. Look for thoughts that you notice and then say to those thoughts, this thought about juggling apples, this thought about the news being dumb, this thought about that new backpack there, doesn't mean anything. It's like the things that are in this room. This is the practice. This is just a short little attempt. These little 2-minute things is the beginning. It's a home run lesson here. There's some dingers there, and you could read it on your own. But I think that there's some nice, if you might want to go back and listen to the explanation, because the context, if you haven't read the text at all, so I'm trying to bring some context to it for people so that they can get more value out of it. Like I said, this is holographic information. If you pick up any part of it really at any point, you pick up all of it. That's what it says. And also, it's there is some interesting foundational things. Check out Tiny Mad Idea. The Tiny Mad Idea is a foundational thing. If you're digging this and wondering what it's about, check out the Tiny Mad Idea as a foundational thing. And remember that even more foundational than the origin story of the world of appearances, which is the Tiny Mad Idea taken seriously, forgot to be laughed at. Even more fundamental than the origin story of the world of appearances is this, that the truth is true, and that if there's something other than it, it isn't true, and that if you changed it, it wouldn't be what it is. It would be something different, but it's true, actually. The truth is true. It's always true. This is logic. That's the base of the Course in Miracles as like map, you could say. And then next, this, how did the world of appearances seem to start? The tiny mad idea, which into the mind of God crept, at which it forgot to laugh, which was, what if I could be other than what I am? What if there was something that was against what is? And that's this idea taken seriously. Was identified as identity and then protected from the truth that was that that idea doesn't make sense. But the world appeared to appear to represent symbolically. What would that seem like? What would it be like if everything was against everything? What would it be like if lies could be more strong than truth? What would it be like if we yeah, anyways, so that's the tiny mad idea at which I forgot to laugh. And then this creates a origin story of the world appearing, and then it's forgiven as we go. So here we go. Okay, these thoughts these thoughts don't mean anything. All these thoughts, they're like the things in this room. So forgiveness, goodness sakes.